the bat, I think our backgrounds are very similar. I think we both started our careers in Chicago, I think.
Yep,
Are you originally from the Chicago land area?
I am. Yeah, I went to U of I in Champaign and then ended up in Chicago afterwards and was there for a little over a decade, working in the agency world.
Yeah. And did you know you wanted to go down that path, like coming out of school? Like I'm assuming marketing was your background, but did you specifically kind of envision yourself in the agency world?
Yeah, when you're that young, I feel like you don't ever really truly know what you want to do. But I did major in marketing, and I was really interested in events, and I feel like it was maybe like a juvenile interest in just like, oh, it sounds exciting and fun and fast paced, and I would get to travel and that sort of thing. So I was interested in like experiential marketing, which is what I ended up doing, and kind of I'm one of the, I guess, more unusual people in that set out to do that, and I actually got to do it for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah. My background, obviously also in marketing, and I sort of landed like same thing. I knew I wanted to do marketing, majored in marketing. I started, in '07, which was like a weird year to find a job,
Yeah,
pretty much
rough.
anywhere in any industry. And
Hmm.
kind of got lucky and got an agency job right out of the gate. And then
Nice.
I think, yeah, that's why I'm saying our backgrounds, I think, are pretty similar because I was probably
Hmm.
10, a little over 11 years, I think, was about the extent of my journey, because I reached a point where I knew, I didn't want to do that forever. And once you hit
Hmm.
10 years, you kind of have a decision to make.
Yep,
Because you're
totally.
either pretty much, in love with it, you're on the right path, or
Hmm.
a lot of people just get kind of miserable because
Yeah,
it can be
get
a
burnt out.
grind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you know when did you kind of start to feel that? Well, first of all, you were, I think, similar to me. I think you were like on the account side of things for a while, and then I think I saw
Hmm.
you shifted to a little bit of creative strategy, brand strategy. What
Hmm.
what what was that shift look like?
Yeah, so I started on the account side. I did that for 4 years, and I worked for Agency A. And when we started, we were kind of small, but we're growing really quickly. And so a lot of the more creative tasks were sort of like kind of ended up just falling to me because we were sort of a lean team.
Yeah.
And I realized like that's what I was really interested in, like really enjoyed. And then so I moved to the creative team, and my role was creative strategy. So I'm not necessarily like a designer, like didn't have like like a skill set that was like I had training in necessarily, but
Hmm.
I found that I was like a good writer and I was a good creative thinker and like strategic thinker. And so that's kind of what got me into the creative strategy position, which I think was very much just sort of like earned based on sort of the reputation I'd built there. It's not that I had like if I tried to like apply to another company for that role, I wouldn't have been qualified, but it worked out that I kind of got that internal
Hmm.
move. And then from there, starting around the pandemic, obviously we were in events, and so that was rough on my agency. And so we quickly pivoted. I feel like that was like the word of the year, which we're actually celebrating 5 year anniversary of COVID right now. But yeah, so we started a new agency, like a sister agency within my agency called Story Horse. It was like kind of like a branding house. And so that was kind of a way to sort of like COVID proof our work and really focus on stuff that was not just like hinging on in person events, but more so brand strategy, which like worked out great for me because I was finding that that was what I was actually most interested in of everything I was doing. Like the events were fun for my youth and exciting and fast paced, but I really liked thinking more about brands and how they communicate with people and like the more like psychological elements to it and just really understanding like the business model and like what differentiates a brand like in the minds of consumers. And
Hmm.
so first brand that I built was our agency brand that we were kind of starting up. And then from there, had like clients that I got to work on like rebrands and stuff like that. And I did that for like around a year and then made a move to an agency out of New York that's a digital agency and was kind of like a creative strategy director there for about a year as well.
And what kind of clients did you have between those two agencies? Were there certain? I mean, obviously events, or
Hmm.
starting out with events, but then working with other clients. Did you have any kind of
Yeah,
specific industry?
huge range. We were pretty industry agnostic, but had like a lot of tech clients. Hilton was a big client. We had Samsung and Google. And Molson Coors. So a lot of like big clients, and then also like smaller brands that you may not have heard of, or like slightly more mom and pop or like Chicago
Hmm.
companies too. So
Yeah,
it really ran the gamut and was pretty industry agnostic. That was something I really liked about it, was just the variety. I felt like I was always learning. It really like satisfied my like curious urges to like learn more about different businesses and kind of like their business models, their audience. Like I would really get into like kind of who are these people that are buying this product or attending these events, and how are they thinking, and like
yeah,
what pushes them to make a decision and kind of pushes them past like apathy and has them take an action.
yeah,
So that I really liked working on so many different businesses in that sense, just being able to like be very curious.
yeah. And I think every agency person has either a favorite client or like a favorite project that you worked on. Is there one
Hmm.
that comes to mind for you?
Um, It's hard to say. I feel like I was kind of like a little chameleon. Like I would just think about what the client wanted and think about, does this hit that mark? And I would forget like what is it that I am interested in.
Yeah.
But the one that I think sticks out probably the most for me is I worked on Hilton for many years, and we did a lot of conferences for Hampton and their hotels brand, and they had like a very expressive like internal brand personality that was
Hmm.
like very fun to come up with ideas for and just like really immerse yourself in.
Hmm.
Um, I think what I realized like after working on so many different brands over time was that none of them were necessarily like my dream brand. Like
Yeah.
I hadn't interacted with a brand that I was like, this is exactly what I love and would, be a consumer of, and, these values align with mine exactly. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's why I left, was like, I was like, I'm not finding something that's like totally filling my cup. But it was fun to kind of be that chameleon and just sort of like pop around and sort of dive into
Yeah.
different brand personalities.
Did what would your dream brand have been? Did you always kind of have one in mind? I think
Um, well, I'm going to be biased, obviously, but
sure.
Sunniemade, the one I started.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I was always working at agencies where I got plugged into like just like one big account that the agency had, and big B2B brands, and
Hmm.
so it's funny in my career I never had that variety, and I always
Hmm.
kind of got burnt out from like getting to know one brand inside and out.
Yeah.
It got to a point where it almost felt like kind of like a client side like gig rather than an
Yeah.
agency. So it wasn't until I kind of went out on my own and started working with all sorts of brands like left and right. I
Hmm.
think I like
Yeah.
had to get it out of my system, like getting all that
Yeah.
variety. But yeah, that's definitely good for somebody who's really loves the strategy side of things, and I guess the creative as well. But
Hmm.
I was an account person, but I always felt like I kind of was like the strategy person, a little bit of a creative person, a little bit of like
Hmm.
even like the analytics like area,
Yeah.
kind of
You have
like
to be.
all kind of like inside of like an account manager was how I felt.
Hmm.
So
Totally.
so it wasn't until I was out on my own too that I got to just kind of flex some of those like different muscles and try
Hmm.
different things and work with different companies and industries. Um, so the agency, I think you said it was in New York, right? Was it
Hmm.
like a remote job, or were you had traveled to New York?
Yeah, it was remote, so it worked out. It was post pandemic, and
Yep.
so I worked remotely, but I did travel to New York to
Yep.
take meetings and stuff like that.
Yep. And so that was a couple years. And then, I mean, in terms of like your story, I assume that's getting pretty close to the time where you started kind of having the kind of entrepreneurial itch, wanting to build something of your own. Did you
Hmm.
have the idea, the specific idea for Sunny Made, like kind of ready to go, or did you play around with other ideas too?
Yeah, so I was actually I did it as a side hustle for a while. So the whole time I was at the New York agency, I had already started it, and actually started it at the agency prior. But kind of the trajectory was basically that. Well, like I kind of primed you for, like I wanted, I had this urge to work for something that I found really fulfilling and like passionate about, and I hadn't found that with any of my clients. And I also couldn't think of like, I couldn't answer that question that you gave me of like, what would be your
Yeah.
dream brand to work on? I didn't have one that I was like so into and so passionate about that, like, okay, I could just, shoot for the moon and try and work here. And like you said, agency world, some people it's for them long term, but I think most people it's kind of like, I think it's really fun for like a decade and then you kind of get just burnt out, or, you want something different. And so I'd kind of done some soul searching around like, well, what would I do next? And I had a hard time coming up with that. And I had always had like an entrepreneurial sort of like itch, and kind of felt like, well, what if I just start a company doing what I'm passionate about, or something that would be more fulfilling. And I had been on kind of like a sustainability journey, and getting more informed about the environment and making sustainable swaps in my routine. And at the time, had just started dating my now husband, and kind of had this epiphany because he was using Dial bar soap, and he loves that I always throw him on under the bus when I tell the story. But I
Yeah.
just was like, this doesn't smell good, and like it's kind of like a weird color, and like, what is this bar soap? Because had always kind of been raised on like shower gel, and I feel like I associated bar soap with like my kind of like boomer parents, and you think of like just kind of like a grimy bar with like a hair on it, and like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
not an appealing user experience. But at the same time, I was like, well, wait a minute, this is far more sustainable as far as like it's concentrated, it's, plastic free, it's waterless, you can have like a cleaner product, you don't have to add preservatives. And just overall, it's kind of like, why are we watering down this product when you don't actually need to add water? It's in the shower already. It was kind of the epiphany I had. But I was like, this is really like feels like a marketing problem, and kind of like a product and like formulation problem, as far as like just telling that story in a more clear way and helping to educate consumers on like how to use bar soap and to use it in a way that's really appealing, and formulating it in a way that has like clean ingredients and essential oils, and make it this like very sensorial, like pleasant experience that at the same time helps people realize like that this is a more sustainable choice too. Because I didn't really see any bar soap brands that were like telling that story either. It just kind of felt like a mystery. And I thought to myself like, well, my skill set is in marketing, which is like education in a way of like educating and empowering consumers and telling that story, and kind of felt like maybe my skill set could sort of add value to this product category. So I got my start literally YouTubing how to make soap with my husband. And we just started making it in our kitchen and kind of went from there. And just, it was very much like a trial and error process of like, with both the formula, with the brand, with like how I was going to market. Like, I was very much like not sure where it was headed. It was kind of like, this could be fun as a business, or maybe it's a hobby. I don't know. I want to try this new job in New York, and we'll just kind of see
yeah.
where things land. And the deeper I got into it, the more excited and invested I got into it, and the more interested I got in making it more real and more full time and more of like a real company. So, like I said, started as a side hustle, and we started just kind of like selling at markets and like local events in Chicago, and then really scaled up from there and just kind of got more sophisticated as I made more time for it.
Yeah. So if it sounds like well, obviously it started as probably no like real expectations around it. Like it could, like you said, it
Mm-hmm.
could just be a fun side hustle, and maybe you'd make some money. Maybe it would, like, who knows where it goes. Did you have a
Mm-hmm.
moment when you started realizing, oh, maybe there is something here. Maybe we need to like start looking forward and do like proper market research, or like really try
Mm-hmm.
to understand who the audience might be, what like that message and that story that takes a while to kind of get that dialed in based on
Mm-hmm.
figuring out a bunch of other stuff. Like, did you have a moment where you kind of thought, okay, maybe this does need to be something a little bit more thought through in terms of just like where it's going?
I don't know if it was like a specific moment, but I definitely like always just had this eye on like what I was doing and how I could do it better. And I feel like I've always just kind of had that mindset of like, how could we make this better? How could we optimize? And I am kind of a perfectionist, so I just had a hard time resisting like improving it further and being like, well, but if we did this then it'll really move, or like I think this is what people are looking for, and that will really shake things up. And I think I went to a lot of like kind of like local makers markets and stuff like that. And that was a really good way for me to sort of test the product. And I would really just kind of like treat it almost as like a focus group that I was, profiting at. And I would kind of observe my customers. They'd walk up to the booth, they'd grab a product, they'd smell it, they'd ask me a question. And I would really analyze like, okay, what's turning them away or what's keeping them here and helping them make the purchase. And I use that as just a way to better understand kind of like what are people's pain points and things that are kind of making or breaking their decision, and optimizing from there. So I had a lot more SKUs and I kind of scaled them just to the best sellers. And that was just a really good way for me to kind of hone in on what people care most about. And like, I think insights from that were people care about sustainability, but they also care a lot about themselves, which is human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that sustainability is sort of like the bonus, and the messaging really needs to talk about like why this is an effective product and why it's going to work for them. And then, kind of like the sustainability piece is sort of the value add. And another big insight that I got from that is I very quickly after launching the bar soap added shampoo and conditioner bars. And that was like huge because that's now our best selling category. And it got people really excited because there was a lot of novelty in shampoo bars that people didn't necessarily have with bar soap. And so that was a really good insight for me to know that like there's huge potential in this category. And talking to people at markets was fascinating because people would be like blown away. Like some people would be like, I've never even heard of this. What is it? And there was like this skepticism that was fun to like talk them through and be like, no, it actually works. Like it's really sudsy. Like check this out. Like I promise you, you won't regret it. And we have tons of loyal customers just because of the shampoo bars and get like a lot of rave reviews about those. So that was a really good insight that I kind of unlocked early on as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it looks like, oh, well, that was like an obvious choice and it worked out really well. And
Mm-hmm.
created all these other opportunities and sales. And like you said, your most popular
Mm-hmm.
products. But at the time, what was it something you were nervous about? What was it? Was there a piece of feedback that you got from a customer, or was it looking at in some competitive, analysis of like other companies? Like what was it that led you to kind of launch the new product?
So I think the two categories are nice because they complement each other really well and have almost opposite like attributes as far as like how people can purchase the product and how aware they are of it. So obviously bar soap been around for ages. Like this was sort of like the let's reinvent an age old category strategy. And that category is kind of ubiquitous. Like you can get a bar of soap almost anywhere. Like it's easy to find in stores. Obviously our aim is to still have a differentiator of like we're doing this better and differently than other brands. But almost anyone's comfortable like buying a bar of soap. They, understand how it works and they might just pick it up for like gifts or there's really no like skepticism around bar soap. It's just a matter of like, do I want a bar of soap right now? And then shampoo and conditioner bars is kind of the inverse. A lot of people haven't heard of it and it's not ubiquitous, which can be actually a really good thing because people can't find it in their local store. They really like, there's a lot of like retention and loyalty around that. And they come back to us over and over because, there's not that many places that you can find bar soap or bar shampoo. And then of the bar shampoo that's out there, I'm told over and over, like this is the best that they've tried. So that sort of like novelty and like ownability is really important for us as business. So like when I sell at like a in-person market, like a farmer's market or like event, people might walk by and they might spontaneously buy a bar of soap and not put too much thought into it. But they may not reorder as frequently or consistently because they can get it locally. or wherever they are already doing their shopping.
Hmm.
And then maybe fewer people are interested in trying a shampoo bar because they are, I think of it as like a sustainability 2.0 versus the bar soap being more entry level. But then when they do, they consistently reorder, or we get a lot of like online sales from new customers that are just like looking for a shampoo bar and they find it's online and they're like, this is the best place for me to like get this because it is harder to find in person. So I think they complement each other really well and are nice to kind of like balance out our channels and make it so that there's just like a good mix of attributes across our channels.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. You said sustainability like 2.0. That was kind of one of the first things I was thinking is as a marketer and a strategist and a brand person. I think like that's a very fun challenge of saying there's like these two humps you have to get over. It's the
Mm-hmm.
sustainability kind of message because it might be easy to reach people who are like they're very aware of like sustainability and like pursuing products that have that. But then there's also might need people outside of there to educate them a little bit on maybe the type of sustainability that that you're offering in the product, and then on top of that, and the other challenge of
Mm-hmm.
there's this kind of interesting new product that it's sustainability, but then there's this other layer to it of a product they might not be used to. So I could
Mm-hmm.
see as someone with your background that probably was kind of a fun challenge to go and
Yeah.
figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
And about how far into starting the company are we talking right now when you kind of launched a new product and we're like finding success with the shampoo bar?
Probably call it 6 months or
Okay.
so.
Okay. So it
Yeah.
was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and outside of kind of the, in-person markets and where you're like face to face and you're like, you're talking directly to the customer, which is, like you said, probably some of the best, market research you can get.
Mm.
Were you selling like where else were you selling at that time?
So I have a Shopify site, so I was
Yep.
selling on Shopify, and then I think pretty quickly I was also on Etsy too.
Okay.
Yeah, not a huge channel for us, but we do get traction there, and so that was another channel. And then I think fairly quickly I was also on Fair, which is like a wholesale channel. A lot of like independent retailers, like gift shops and that sort of thing, will purchase on Fair as well. So I think I was on there pretty soon. So yeah, that was I think were the early channels for the most part.
Yeah. So in those early stages, did you have like what were the challenges that you had finding the right channels where people are buying, the right channels for
Hmm.
promoting? What were you juggling during that time? Or was it like pretty smooth and kind of easy to like get things going? I mean, I'm assuming there were some challenges somewhere, right? Of kind of figuring out where to spend your time.
Yeah, I mean at that time we were still making all the products, which was extremely inefficient because we didn't like have the equipment. We were just making a home kitchen,
Yep.
and I was planning a wedding at the same time too. I really like bit off a lot to chew, and I was working full time, so that
Wow.
was a lot. But I was like, this is something I care about, and I want to make time for it, so I did. But it really started to put us over the edge a little bit with just like all the manufacturing in-house being so laborious and tedious because I didn't have ways to save time using like sophisticated equipment. And then so it was kind of almost like supply and demand issues of like, well, I'm still building this business and I need to get the word out there and acquire new customers. But I also have to make all this product, but I don't want to scale up to manufacturer until I have more customers, but I don't have time to make more product to scale up. So it's kind of one of those. So that was, I think, the earliest problem to really solve for. And at the same time, I was very much like building the ship as I was sailing it. So I was kind of figuring out kind of like the brand and what I wanted it to be and how I wanted to position it, and working on kind of like way too after the fact, kind of like realizing I needed to figure out like a trademark, like if I really cared about, going big, like I would need to have that sort of figured out, and couldn't get a trademark. So there was a lot of messiness early on and just being like, where's this headed and what do I have time to try to tackle?
Yeah. What do you think helped you get through that? Was it just put your head down and power through it, or can you pinpoint like, you know, sort of a strategy or a mindset or an attitude, or like what was it you think that kind of got you through that?
I would say just like blind optimism, bit
Yeah.
of naivety.
Yeah.
um, I think probably if you ask most entrepreneurs, I assume they would say that if they knew how much work it was going to be, they would never have done it.
Yeah.
And I probably fall into that category of like, I I just talk to my husband about it. It's a problem. I like am always like, oh, it'll be easy. We'll have it done in no time, and then I bite off a lot, and then I follow through with it. So I think I'm just like a hard worker and a bit a bit too optimistic to quit on anything. And so I just was kind of like, burning the candle at both ends and
Hmm.
making things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of leads me to my next question. And of the founders who I talk to, this is the question where I'd say more than half the time they kind of chuckle a little bit because I ask like like when did you feel like things were starting to click? When did you think, oh wow, like there's really something, like we got something here?
Hmm.
Um, because a lot of them kind of laugh and they go, I don't think I ever feel that because I always am just my head is down and I'm looking to the next thing. And so it's sort of like the answer goes either way. But like, did you have like a moment or like a part of your story where you're like, okay, this is really going, like I can see where it's going, and we're gonna have to
Hmm.
dedicate, maybe a lot more time to it, or
Hmm.
get people to help, or like what did that look like?
Good question. I mean, there were definitely signs to keep going. For like, I think every time I would have like a low point of like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. What have I done? And like, I have so far to go. Every time I would have kind of one of those moments of like, is this worth it? Like, should I be doing this? Then I would then the next day have like a big win. And it just like every time I had that moment of hesitation, something would come down the pike and I would be like, okay, it's a sign to keep going. And that just kept happening. So it wasn't like one individual moment. It was just sort of like if I didn't keep getting those like big wins or positive kind of encouragement moments, I would have maybe took a good hard look at it. But that kept happening. And I think probably the most encouraging one was just over the last, we're celebrating 3 years this month. And it really was probably like the last, like, kind of like Black Friday, like holiday kind of shopping season that I was like, man, I don't know any of these customers or where they're coming from. And that's also a problem. I need to figure out how to attribute these orders.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a moment of like, man, there's like word of mouth. And I ask like when you complete your order, like, how did you hear about us? And I was getting a lot that were just like Google search or word of mouth, but where I didn't know the person who spread the word of mouth. Um, or people shopping in a retail store that they then came back to the brand to order things that were like, okay, this isn't because a friend told a friend. Like these are things like people are making this purchase because they came to my website and they were sold. They were like, this looks legit and I like it and I want to buy it.
Hmm.
And that was really validating to me of like I'm converting people who have no reason to buy from me other than they want this product and they think this is the best one.
Yeah. 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 It's a confusing good feeling when
Mm-hmm.
you are stuck, because I like when I was like just getting started out with consulting, I sort of backed into consulting. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing it. I had gotten laid off and I was like doing it to like just to pay the bills for a little bit and figure out, am I
Mm-hmm.
going to go get another agency job? Am I going to go work on the client side? And then I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I'll make a website. And then all of a sudden, I'm like posting on LinkedIn, and like some person, I have no idea who they are, went to the website, filled out a form and said, hey, I want to hire you to do
Mm-hmm.
XYZ. And it was like the weirdest feeling, the scariest feeling. So it was the same thing. I was like, I
Yeah.
have no idea how they found me. I was like a LinkedIn post,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like, it's definitely fuel to keep going. I always use the analogy of golf. Like golf is the most
Hmm.
infuriating sport, and more than half the time you hate it. And then, but then you have like one like really good hole or like one awesome shot, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I love this. I'm going to do this the rest of my life.
Totally.
And then I'm miserable for the next like 2 hours, and
Yeah.
I still love it. So that's sort of, to me, entrepreneurship in like a nutshell.
Yeah.
Um, and so you said you're coming up on 3 years. At
Hmm.
what point, or how long of that time were you like still working full time and juggling a
Hmm.
lot of stuff? Like how much of the 3 years was that?
Probably like around like a year and a half or so. It was kind of like I slowly transitioned because I was full time and then I asked my boss to go kind of like part time. Like I just had to like I was doing like around 30 hours a week. And then I just kind of switched to more of like a freelance thing where I would just take on projects. And I was doing that for a while. And but when I stopped being full time, I think it was about a year and a half into Sunniemade.
Hmm. And when you kind of all of a sudden had a lot like more time to work on it,
Hmm.
did you find yourself working on like different parts of the business, or just having more time to like sit down and like really dedicate to like the stuff you were already doing? Like how much
Hmm.
of how much of it was kind of marketing and branding and figuring out how to reach more people, and how much of it was just like rolling up your sleeves and like managing the business? Like what did
Hmm.
that split look like for you?
It started, I mean, by the time I went part-time, I had already outsourced manufacturing because obviously you have to think about like what's going to be the best use of your time. Like if you can make more money working in the agency world and outsource stuff that other people could probably do better than you, like the manufacturing, like that makes sense,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, so I kept working for a while just to make the money that I could reinvest into my business and then pay other people to do things that I don't need to personally be doing. So for a while that was a big part of kind of that shift. And then now that I have a lot of the operational stuff outsourced, like for a while there, I still was doing fulfillment and I was doing like some like boxing of the products and that sort of thing. And then starting but like by last fall ish is when I fully like outsource all the operations. So no more fulfillment, no more doing any of the things that I could, pay someone to do and would be like a better use of my time to have someone else do that. And then from there it was kind of a question of like how much time do I need to spend on sales and marketing versus like the operational stuff, which is like keeping things going.
Hmm.
So it's nice that for the most part, even when I'm getting a lot of sales, I don't have to do a ton. I just need to make sure we have products in stock and coordinate with my manufacturers and the box printer and kind of make sure things get boxed appropriately and sent to the right places and kind of sent to fulfillment centers or storage, that sort of thing. So that takes up some of my time. And then I mainly spend most of my time on marketing. And then when I have extra time, which I wish I had more of it, I work on sales and work on kind of bringing in new retailers and both like small and bigger retailers. So like some cold outreach and then also just kind of keeping in touch with buyers that I'm kind of working on bringing in like bigger accounts too.
Hmm. Yeah. What would you say? Like, what is the biggest challenge outside of just sales and marketing, just being a massive amount of time? What are some of the challenges that you kind of find yourself working through, like as you're scaling, or is it kind of the same challenges along the way? You're just kind of trying to reach different people with a slightly different message, maybe.
Yeah, I think it'll probably always be like how to acquire customers in an affordable manner. So like we don't run any ads. I frankly haven't really experimented with it that much, but in the little bit of tinkering I've done, I feel like it's going to be expensive and just hard to pull off
Yeah.
in like a sustainable way. So um, I work on, like retaining my customers and making sure that, we're getting across to new customers. And that's usually through like social and email. And then working on just getting like press and getting like online visibility that can acquire us new customers in like more of a low cost way. And then, yeah, so that's kind of the hardest part, I would say. And then, same goes for bringing in retailers, obviously wholesale customers. That part can be expensive and can just be like a long sales process as well. And that's obviously, you don't necessarily run ads for that, but it's time intensive for
Hmm.
me. Or, you can work on bringing in like outsourced sales, which is also quite expensive. So I think that's just the hardest part, is kind of figuring out how to bring in new customers
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't break the bank. And, we're basically all of our profits we reinvest in customer acquisition.
Yeah. What, for social, what are some of the bigger channels for you?
We're most consistent on Instagram. I'm very inconsistent on TikTok, and frankly, don't spend a ton of my time on there. And I feel like you need to be very ingrained in the channel to know the best way to put content on it. So I would say Instagram. I'm definitely noticing it just seems like there's lower engagement on Instagram across the board. The algorithm, I feel like, is always changing, and so I think it performed better for us in the past, but I still do get a lot of orders where people say, like, first time order, and they say like, "Oh, I discovered you via a social media post." So I'm kind of up to minds about like how much energy to invest in it, because it hasn't. I wouldn't say that it's growing, but it does still seem to perform for us.
Yeah. And is that the kind of thing that you like, you enjoy, like kind of tinkering and experimenting and kind of getting in the laboratory of like, even if it's just like one channel, like different types of posts and different, ways of testing content. I mean, is that the kind of thing
Mhm.
that you like doing?
Yeah, I like the creative and the storytelling side of it. I'm less into like the more like social media manager growth mindset. I
Hmm.
like to just put good content out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I probably should pay more attention to what happens, but I don't worry too much about it. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, this is a good post. Here we go. But like you said, I think this is kind of the inverse of working in the agency world, where you're kind of figuring out how to say the same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
And after, doing it for a while, I do get a little like drained on like new ideas for how to, like, we mainly just want you to buy our product. So how do we say that
Hmm.
again?
Yeah.
In a creative way that feels like it's not salesy, and it's, authentic, and feels like you're building community, and, all that stuff. So it does get a little hard to continue to kind of generate new ideas when I have been doing it for a bit now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've also never really loved like getting in the weeds of like, looking at all of like the metrics and the analytics and,
Hmm.
the science and the art. Like I get that you kind of need to do both, but I kind of also have the same mindset. Like when I was doing it for myself, like I had people asking me like, oh, well, what, like what platforms are driving the most leads? And I'm
Hmm.
like, I just try to put out like, if I put out content, I want it to be helpful. I want it to,
Yeah.
it's so cliche. I want it to add value. Like that's what everybody says.
Hmm.
But, and then I was kind of the same way. I just tended to not think about it too much. But then over the years, I've like worked with clients where I've had to get into it a little bit more and start to, at the very least, think about kind of what you were saying, like figuring out content that is a little bit skewing a little bit more promotional and, more about the product, but then
Hmm.
the sort of the brand and the story and how can a company that sells like a widget like be entertaining and
Hmm.
how do you entertain people but like also talk about your product, and so that's a challenge I love like
Yeah.
unpacking and working through with clients, and it's never an easy one, but
Hmm.
um, to me for me that's the extent of where how I like
Hmm.
to sort of solve that equation of like how do you like
Hmm.
actually drive results with social media. So I was curious kind of
Yeah.
like if that was something that just you're doing. I mean, do you have have you hired anybody to help with anything like that, or is it really just kind of you managing it?
It's me, and then I've been kind of just tinkering with honestly ChatGPT as a way to save some time and also to have like another non-human brain to collaborate with.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, to your point, I think, I mean, I used to always tell this to my like agency clients, like you, like rule number one with any content you put out, it needs to be high utility. And utility can be like literally useful, like you're giving people practical tips, or it could be entertaining, it could be inspiring, it could be engaging, but put out content that, like you said, adds some value and provides people with something, because the second it comes off as like salesy or like an advertisement, people are going to scroll on by. So I try to make sure that that comes across in everything I put out there too. And then from there, I'm kind of like, all right, well, I'm not going to worry too much about the results because I believe this is of value to people, and hopefully the right people are seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when it comes to like email marketing, I imagine you do a lot of like the very kind of standard, when somebody buys from you, there's a sort of all sorts of sequences of emails that they get. And, but how
Mhm.
else have you played around with email marketing?
Yeah, so our kind of baseline, kind of like on a monthly basis, like we have like automated flows, like you said. So like the sort of like new customer and nurturing and all that sort of thing, re like reactivating like a customer who hasn't purchased in a while, like those sorts of flows are all kind of set up and automated. And then I do a monthly newsletter, and then typically like a monthly like promotion, like offering some sort of discount. And the newsletter is kind of like a roundup of just kind of what's going on with Sunniemade. So I share often like some kind of like more personal updates. Like I want people to know that they're supporting a small business, and it's a woman owned business, but really it's kind of like a family owned business too. I get a lot of support from my husband. And so I usually do a roundup of like what we've been up to. And then like press that we've gotten. I always feature a customer review, just to kind of show that, like when you leave a review, I see it and it means a lot to me, and I share it with others, and it's valuable to them too. And really just kind of whatever is sort of like newsworthy or like seasonal. So I do that every month. And then we'll also, of course, do like promotions for like holidays. I do like a big Black Friday, Cyber Monday push, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. What about partnerships? Do you ever have partnerships with like other sustainable brands, or just getting Sunniemade like featured in areas where whether it's email or wherever else,
Hmm.
just to get more kind of exposure?
Yeah, I've done some. I would like to do more and to do them better. But like I've done like giveaways, and I have partnered with brands on like including some of our products and in things that they're shipping out to their customers, and that sort of like reciprocity. I'd like to do them on a bigger scale though. I think it's a really good opportunity to just get visibility from like aligned customers. And when running ads started to be a lot more expensive, I think brands had to get a lot more creative about how to acquire customers and
Yeah.
become a lot more collaborative. And I love that energy, and want to continue to kind of like network with other founders and come up with, I think like the giveaway on Instagram is like kind of run its course. Like I don't think people are engaging in those as much as they used to, but coming up with like more novel and creative ways to partner that are really like tailored to each of the brands and what they're delivering, and really focus on like aligning those like niche audiences. But I haven't done a ton with that yet. I just know
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I ask is I know from some experience with clients, like partnerships can seem like such a no-brainer and such an obvious thing, but if and it's different for every like company, but sometimes like it can just be an awful lot of work, and then at
Yeah.
the end of it, you're like, well, I guess it made sense, but it was so much work,
Yeah.
and both sides have to kind of win, and so it can be a
Hmm.
tricky thing without a lot of that like strategic thinking on the upfront. So I was curious
Yeah.
if you kind of went down any of those paths, and then that's one of those things where you might go down the path for a little bit and realize, oh, okay, it was good that we tried it, but
Hmm.
maybe a little bit of a swing and a miss.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you mentioned AI. I'm curious if
Hmm.
you how do you use it? Do you use it a lot? Are you finding it helpful? I think most people I talk to, it's for the most part, it's just like a giant like efficiency hack, like just saving
Yeah.
time on just sort of tedious tasks that used to take an
Hmm.
hour and now they take 5 minutes. Like how
Hmm.
I'm just kind of curious from somebody running a business, like how do you find yourself using it? Is it more and more, or is it kind of like a specific couple of ways that you like to use it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a big time saver for me. I think, especially also just being a solo entrepreneur. Like I said, you kind of run out of ideas or you don't have someone to collaborate with like on a daily basis. And so it's helpful for that too. So I'll usually prompt it for like every month I do like a kind of planning session to come up with like, okay, what am I gonna, put out this month? Do I have any campaigns or unique things I want to pull off this month? And so I'll prompt it like around holidays or around, any sort of initiatives that I have in mind, like give me 10 ideas. And I think the more specific you can be, the better. So I try to be very like narrow, almost like as if I'm in, back in the agency world, writing a creative brief for the creative
Yeah.
team, like can be specific about what you want. And I found that I get actually pretty good ideas through that. And then I use it a lot for copywriting too. So I do, every month we do a blog post, which is good for kind of a repository of resources for our customers, but also because it really helps with SEO and has improved kind of like our rankings. So I used to write them all myself and then now use ChatGPT, and it does save me a lot of time. And now I just kind of edit for tone and, make sure everything's accurate and all that sort of thing. So that's been a huge time saver too. I'm sure there's other ways I could be using it that I'm not currently.
Yeah.
But just those two, I think have been really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the creative brief thing because I just today was using it to write something. I don't even remember what it was, but I've never been a great writer. I look at a blank page and I just kind of get overwhelmed. My mind goes in too many different ways. But I realized like as I was submitting it, I was like, I pretty much just wrote a creative brief and then gave it to ChatGPT because like at some
Hmm.
point you're giving it so much direction. And
Yeah.
the more direction and the more specific, like you said, the better, the output. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I sort of had a flashback to my agency days of like writing briefs for, fill in the blank, whatever client project.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. AI is the kind of thing where it's good and it's bad that there's so many different ways you can
Hmm.
use it. And every day everybody's finding out new ways. So, um, yeah, for somebody who doesn't love writing, it's a godsend.
Yeah, and I love writing, but it saves me so much time. So whether you like it or not, it's
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah. Um, I guess I shouldn't knock on writing too much because I do love that like the last mile of like writing of
Hmm.
like you said, tone and just sort of like making sure that certain things are definitely in there. I do like that. So
Yeah.
um, so I wanted to ask you too about. So it's like you said, it's coming up on 3 years, right? That you've
Hmm.
been in business. Where like what are you excited about today? Where are there like trends? I think sustainability just as an idea and a movement, it's been around for a while, but I'm imagining
Hmm.
that there are things happening all the time that are good and helpful and just kind of reaching more people and more people being open to exploring products.
Hmm.
But just like kind of as an umbrella thing, are there like what are trends you're kind of excited about that you look at for your sustainability in general, but
Hmm.
for your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, like you said, are becoming more and more aware of and more open-minded about making sustainable swaps. So I think that in general is just a great trajectory and a great kind of like wave to be riding. And then, like from a product standpoint, I haven't mentioned this yet, but we did launch a lip balm last summer, and it's a really unique format. It's a paper squeeze tube. So you may have seen
Oh,
like the push tubes. This one's like a paper squeeze tube, almost like a toothpaste, but obviously at a smaller scale.
hmm.
So it's a really unique packaging innovation that we've been able to launch, and people have been really excited about that. And I think in general, our filter for like when we expand into new product categories is like our differentiator is like we make plant powered plastic free products. So anything that's going to be sustainable and natural. And um, that is also going to be delightful for people to use. So we only put out products that like I believe in and that are not what I would consider like a trade-off or a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So does this feel like a sustainable upgrade or something that like you love to use and just happens to be sustainable? Then that's kind of like the product that we want to put out there. So the lip balm I think has really hit the mark with that, and people have kind of like loved that packaging innovation. So I'm kind of just keeping my eye on like other innovations that we can take advantage of. I've seen like there's like deodorant in the push tubes, and I've tried those, and they're not, they just kind of get stuck, and they can be a frustrating experience. And then there's also like solid, like lotion that can be in a variety of formats that I haven't found yet the right way to do that in a way that doesn't feel like a packaging frustration.
Yeah.
So just kind of keeping my ear to the ground on the best way to approach some other kind of like common like personal care challenges and ways to like eliminate plastic from them. But so far, nothing set in stone.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about those things, do you try to kind of stay true to, I think, where a lot of the products have come from, where you just think about in your experience and things you've used and things you'd want to do better and things that you, like you personally could like really get behind? Is that, do you try to
Mm-hmm.
stick to that? Or do you kind of try to marry that with, maybe at this point, probably, maybe feedback that you're getting from customers? Is it a little bit of both? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
how do you look at that when you start kind of projecting out for, innovation?
Yeah, I try not to let me be the sort of like litmus test for everything because I have a much higher tolerance for like sustainable trade-offs than the average customer. So a lot of my customers aren't buying from me because they're sustainable. They're buying me from me because they're like, the shampoo bar makes my hair look great.
Mm,
So I think like as long as it's like user friendly and easy for people to use and again works really well for them, then that's really like where kind of I set the bar. Because I myself would be probably willing to go a lot further for the environment than the average person.
yeah.
But yeah, I try to like kind of just socialize it with folks and kind of see how they feel about a product. And honestly, the best way to get feedback is to launch it.
Hmm.
So as long as you feel like it's going to do fairly well. You can always start small and just launch, one SKU or, not invest too much in product to start and then kind of grow from there or taper if you need to.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of my approach.
Yeah. And I know not that much time has gone by, since you like started launching all these products, and they're not, and none of them are sort of, big crazy products that people maybe wouldn't expect. Like it probably fits underneath the umbrella of the brand and
Hmm.
the mission and the story and everything that you've kind of been pushing this whole time. Do you feel like you've had to adjust that along the way, or do you feel like from really the time that you launched, it's sort of been something that has worked despite all the changes in the business and some of the new products and things like that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really just been like optimizing kind of like our assortment. So with every individual SKU we have, there's going to be a cost of like maintaining like the photography and the listings and kind of like a slotting cost at our fulfillment center and that sort of thing. So making sure that we have the right spread and the right assortment of like SKUs within a category. So and just based on like how quickly they move, like how many SKUs does it make sense to have? So we had originally started off with only one shampoo and conditioner and found that people were loving it. It was flying off the shelves and they were craving more variety and they wanted um, products that were like more tailored to like their hair type or their individual hair goals so that that's when I kind of quickly responded to that and expanded. So we started with Mighty Mango, and we now have Super Bloom and Chia Glow as well. And then with the bar soap, we were finding that we didn't need as much variety, and a few of the SKUs were kind of like cannibalizing each other or like more interchangeable. So I actually recently kind of tapered that down to just 4 SKUs. So, and just based on how quickly people were using the product and how often they needed to reorder, for us right now at our current scale, like that made the most sense. So just kind of like tailoring within the category, but not necessarily having to like make big changes.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, again, kind of with this theme of, kind of looking forward, how far forward do you look with the business? Do you ever stop and think about, okay, this is where I think we want to be a year from now or 5 years from now? Like how far out do you typically look, or are you still kind of embracing that startup mentality of like, no, we like the mission is, I'm looking down at the thing we're working on and maybe the thing that's a few steps ahead, but uh, how has that changed all? Like how far forward are you kind of like looking and thinking about these days?
Yeah, I think it's always important to have a plan, but it's also important to know that the plan's going to change. So,
Yeah.
as much as like I want to, look really far out and be like, here's where we're going to be, it's just truly is impossible to predict
Yeah.
and hard to know. It feels like there's so many factors out of my control as far as like I know what I can put out there and try to accomplish. What the response will be is kind of like hard to predict. But I look like a year out. So every year I do like kind of a budgeting exercise and have like goals set for each month within that year. And then, kind of midway through the year, we'll continue to like check in on it and see like how we're tracking towards those goals. But I've gotten better at kind of like forecasting, and I actually will set pretty like aggressive goals. And so far, I've been hitting them pretty well, which I think is a good sign. But yeah, I think about a year is as far as I can think of right now.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future I'll have a 5-year plan, but for now I'm just kind of trying to stay ahead of the next month.
Yep. So no thinking about, 10 years from now having like an empire of sustainable products and
That'd be nice.
yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me and chatting. One last question before you go.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to ask this of everybody because genuinely I'm pretty interested in it. When you're running a business or doing any kind of side hustle or consulting or whatever it might be, it feels like it's just work all the time and it's hard to like turn off your brain.
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you do to kind of unplug, unwind, relax? What do you do to like get away from the day to day of just running a business?
I think I've gotten better at kind of separating church and state a little bit. For a while there, I was like very much like so intent on like getting things off the ground that it was hard to like have kind of like freedom of headspace
Yeah.
and not be like kind of swirling around it all the time. But I've gotten better at it, and I think also that comes with just like it's kind of taking a breather and knowing that like your business is growing and everything's gonna be fine if you kind of like step away for a bit. But I mean, I have a 6-week-old baby, so that's been
Oh
a
my
good way
gosh.
to step away from the business.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, as a business owner, I don't have maternity leave, so it's
Yep.
been a bit of juggling and really, really, really prioritizing and kind of figuring out what's absolutely critical and what can wait. So yeah, spending time with my baby has been the latest thing, but living in Colorado, we're always like looking to get outside and get some fresh air, and that is so great for your mental health, but also like your contributions to your business too. So just having that kind of like time to step away and take a walk and really like have some of those blue sky thoughts that you only have when you're just kind of like looking at a blue sky. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like to do a lot of hikes, and we have a dog as well. So just taking her out for long walks and that sort of thing, I think is a good thing for everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Denver. My wife and I have always said that, like, I guess if we really like had to pick another city outside of Chicago, it might be Denver. We both love Denver. We've got some family
Hmm.
there, and yeah, you don't get as much of the outdoor stuff here in Chicago, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, that's great. congrats on the baby, by the way. I'll let you
Thank
go. Get
you.
back to, you said a daughter, right? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Willa, yes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I'm
Nice.
past that stage a little bit. And
Yeah.
luckily for me, I kind of started my business like about a year before they were born, so I had a little bit of a head start.
Nice. Yeah.
But I'll let you
You've got a
go.
different kind of busy with them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised I don't hear them stomping around right now. Yeah, I appreciate the time. Continued success on the business, and yeah, I'll let you get back to your family.
Cool. Thanks.
All
You as
right.
well. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Bye bye.
Bye.